speakers up bumping that old Kanye. My phone beeping, it's my ex talking about, hey, I'll hit her back tomorrow like I'm straight.
So just this past Saturday, I decided to take the silver car to dinner. So as I'm traveling up the 710 headed northbound, approaching the 5 freeway, if you're familiar with the area, you know that you have to be on the inside lane, like basically in the fast 2 lanes, in order to make the transition from the 710 north in order to get onto the 5. And when I started making that transition onto the ramp, which is a downgrade, I start to, go to really get on it so that way I can try to match the speed of the traffic that I know is coming up the 5. It was a Saturday, so there wasn't very much traffic. So, the cars are flying. They're going, 70 plus miles an hour. And when I go to really get on my gas, I feel like a lot of hesitation in the pedal. And what scared me the most is I got a feeling of like my car boggling down, like it was running out of fuel. So I listened, I kind of, tilt my head to the back because that's where the fuel pump is mounted near the passenger side rear corner of the car. And I realized I don't hear my fuel pump on. So this easily was one of the most terrifying moments I've ever experienced in my life. So as we're going down the downgrade and I'm looking, I'm of course in harness seat belts. I have fender mirrors. It's very difficult to actually see clearly like what's over my shoulder. So I figure I only have like one good punch of gas left. So I tried to accelerate pretty much as fast as I could. Got, all the speed that I could get. Pulled my hazard switch and just as safely as I could just start working the car over, to the shoulder, because I didn't want to get trapped in the fast lane, because in the event that I had to get the car started and get back on the freeway, it's a lot more difficult to get on that side of the freeway than it would be if I was on the right-hand side to the slower moving cars. So luckily, I safely made it all the way to the right. Of course, a couple people beeped at me because, I might have cut them off. My bad. But honestly, it was the safest thing that I could do in my current predicament. And, it made me feel the most comfortable if I had to get underneath the car and try to figure out what was going on. But like I said, I did make it all the way over to the shoulder. And I was able to get the car tucked as closely to the wall as possible. So that way I could try to get under the car and see what was going on with that fuel pump. So I jump out of the car. Of course, I pop the hood. I take a look, make sure, I didn't see any broken lines or anything sketch like that. And I didn't. Everything was in place. Everything looked good. But I go under the backside of the car. I turn the key on to power. Just, not quite on, but just enough to accessories and everything else is running. I go into the back, start messing with the wires, and I realized that it seemed to just have shorted out the fuel pump. After, a few touches and jiggles, it actually turned right back on. And I'm like, oh, sweet. So of course I sit there, I let the fuel pressure build back up. I, make sure it's going to actually stay on. And, I wait for it to get clear. I go to jump back on the freeway. I'm like, okay, I'm good to go. And about 800 meters up, the fuel pump shut off again. Luckily, this time, I was next to an exit. So I'm somewhere in East LA, not a problem. But I'm just trying to figure out, what is my best bet? Of course I want to have dinner, so I'm going to go to the restaurant. I've made it this far. I'm only maybe a couple miles away. But on the street, just due to traffic and everything, 2 miles in LA is 30 minutes. So I decide I'll just take, I'll take Wilshire the rest of the way. So, I get off of the freeway after I get the pump on a second time. And I just, I start driving, I'm maneuvering, I'm going through, but of course I'm staying to the right lane because, I'm terrified of, the fuel pump cutting back off. I'm not sure what the problem is, but I know that it's something simple because every time I touch it, it turns back on. It's a brand new fuel pump. All the wiring leading to it, everything is essentially new. So that's why it makes me so nervous. I didn't really understand what was going on. And it's something that kind of started out of the blue. So, it's something that, of course, I'd have to, after we get through dinner, hopefully, make it home safely, I can diagnose it and figure out what the issue is. So the car cut off maybe a couple more times, but honestly, I was able to kind of jerk the wheel back and forth just to get a little bit of movement in the car. And I guess that little bit of play, whatever the issue was, it actually shook it just enough to get the fuel pump to cut back on. So once again, something else that was very interesting. So we make it to dinner. We park the car, I back it in, I put it back in the corner so that way, if I needed to go in the back and try to sneak and work on it or whatever in this little parking structure, I could kind of do it without, really being bothered or, without standing out too much. So we go ahead, we go into dinner, put our name on the list. Lady tells us it's about a 35-minute wait. So I'm like, okay, cool. I can run out to the car. I can make sure all the wiring and everything is, pretty much legit on the car. I have a few tools in the car. I always keep tools in the car, for moments like this. I do drive an old car. So I'm messing around with the harness and, testing some things and, I have power, everything seems legit. So, I stop messing with it. I go back in, have dinner. We have a great time. And dinner was amazing. Had some of the most delicious Korean barbecue that I've had in a long time. And, get back out to the car and we're ready to head home. So at this point, it's about sun setting and, it's pretty much right before it gets dark as dusk. I turn the car on. I'm letting the car warm up. Man, it's a nice night. Just a beautiful night to honestly just go drive around. But unfortunately, with the car issues, I'm not able to take advantage of that. But, I'm warming up the car and the car shuts off again. And I'm like, what is going on? I check everything. Everything seems to be, together. Nothing seemed out of place. And, I jump out, I get it to turn back on. I pull out in the street. As soon as I get in the street, cuts off again. And I'm like, man, okay, I'm going to give it a few blocks. And if it does it again, I'm just going to call AAA. I have AAA, like 200 plus miles. But I hate wasting the tows because I know I'm going to be heading somewhere one day, maybe driving the car up north, and I'm really going to need the tow. So what I do is I get in there and I'm like, okay, I'm going to take Crenshaw to Martin Luther King to Main Street, and I'm going to take that all the way back towards the house, because I can make the left on Compton Boulevard, maybe slide through Compton, and then by that time, I'm pretty much back in Long Beach. So, it's a pretty straight route, per se, to get back, to be local. So I jump back in the car, and luckily, the pump stayed on the whole way home.
In the coupe, just driving around LA with my speakers up, bumping that old Kanye. My phone beep, it's my ex talking about, hey, I'll hit her back tomorrow like I'm straight.
Hey, I'm Jared Michael from Only the Locals, and if you have a question about your builds, our builds, or anything else, all you have to do is slide in our DMs, and we'll answer it as fast as possible on an episode of The Box.
Tell me where to function